Okay, let's get started with plain weave. Plain weave, or tabby weave, is the simplest, most basic weaving structure. Essentially what we're doing is just going under and over each one of the warp threads. So this is our warp, and our weft is going to be woven into the warp. So if you hear me use those terms, weft is what we're weaving with, warp is what's binding the weaving together. So to begin our plain weave, you'll want to cut off a piece of string, piece of yarn that's about your wingspan's length. And the reason for that is I don't like to weave with any more than I can handle at any given time. You can always add more thread. I like to start my weaving not on the end, but about an inch in. And the reason for that is because then we have our tails will be tucked into the weaving as opposed to hanging out the edge. So using our tapestry needle, we're just going under and over each individual thread. And I'm going to pull through until I have about 1.5 inches of a tail left over. Using your comb or your fingers, you can push the thread all the way up to the top. You'll just go under and over each individual warp thread. You could push it all the way up to the top of the pegs, but since we want to leave room for our dowel, I'm going to leave just this little border open. And then coming around the other side, you're going to go, because this is over the last warp thread, you're going to go under it. You always know that you've done it correctly because the weaving line below will reflect opposite stitches to the weaving line above it. So I can check here. I know that this stitch here is correct because it's under the warp thread, and here it's over. These should always be opposites. Pull up. Weaving is incredibly forgiving. So now we can go ahead and weave to the very end here because our tail is already tucked in. So you'll just continue like this, weaving back and forth till you feel pretty comfortable with plain weave. Pushing up as you go. One thing, these edges, or in weaving we call them salvages, the edges we don't want to pull in. If you pull really, really tight like this, you'll get kind of an hourglass form with your weaving, and we don't want that. We want nice straight edges. The tighter you pull will not affect the strength of the weaving. The structure of the weaving is all determined by the warp threads being tight and secure. You don't need to pull tight. So this right here is the front of our weaving, and we're going to go ahead and deal with these tails later. We're going to push them to the back, but this is the front of our weaving. So go ahead and continue like that until you feel comfortable, maybe until you've woven about 1 inch. Then I want to show you how to utilize your raw cotton that's also in your package. And that is a great way to use that's a great thing to use for plain weave. So once I'm ready to switch colors, I'll do exactly what I did when I started, which is that I'm going to weave about an inch back into the body of the weaving and end there. And the reason for that again is so that the tails remain within the borders of the weaving. We're not going to cut them until we've woven much below. Each layer below is going to secure the rows above. So I'm going to show you how to switch colors, and this time I'm going to use the raw cotton, which is called roving. This is very fun because you can use it in so many different ways. So you'll want to just pull it apart. And it is very malleable. You can create your own pieces with it. So I'm just going to take a chunk out, kind of roll it, twist it into something that resembles a strand of yarn. You can really use this however you want. And then I'm going to pretend as though this string were to continue. So if this string were to continue, currently it's under this warp thread, so the next one it's going to go over. So instead of this pink going over, I'm going to pretend that this blue is an extension of the pink, and this blue is going to go over that warp thread and under, over and under. And again, you can check to make sure that your stitching is correct. You can check it against the row above. So I'll go ahead and pull this up, and I'll see that this is over and the one above is under, so I know that I'm doing that correctly. You can go ahead and push that up. So we're not doing any kind of knotting, we're just leaving those two ends to match each other there, but no knotting is required. And this I find easier to work with if you don't use it with your tapestry needle. You can just use your fingers for this. We're going to turn the corner and go back. Okay.